been some time since the first case of COVID-19 hit the news. From where we sit today, COVID-19 lockdowns have effectively shut down business as we know it, affecting everyone from sole traders to family-run businesses. Even in our own backyard, just outside of the ATA office, dozens of businesses are struggling or already gone. We speak to a few local business owners to find out how the lockdowns have affected them, what they feel could have been done better, but most importantly, what they're doing to navigate through the ever-changing hurdles posed by the government's response to a global pandemic. Our first stop is Oliveto, a local cafe and Potts Point icon that's been around since the early 2000s. We speak to Chris, the tired but resilient owner of this renowned establishment.
The shutdowns have cut our turnover to an eighth of what they were. We've had to reduce staff to 2 people a day from about 7. We've extended our trading hours to night times, which still hasn't alleviated any financial strain, and also started selling groceries at the store, but also using our staff as a delivery service to keep them employed and at the same time offer the same service to our customers that they would here at the shop. Our revenue's dropped by 80%, and that's because we don't have table service anymore. Now we have to rely on takeaway. Our menu was never geared towards that, and to be quite frank, our staff isn't geared to that either.
I asked Chris for his response to the claims that any attempt at keeping businesses open is prioritising money over lives.
Maybe the last 6 weeks has probably cost me 60 grand in wages out of my own pocket whilst waiting for JobKeeper. So for the last 6 weeks, I would have preferred to just be sitting there playing golf, going for a run, playing PlayStation all day. This is a more inconvenient for me more than anything else. So to those people, you think about it. What's the cost of 60 grand out of my pocket? I've had to pull off on loans, I've had to redraw on mortgages. They don't have to do that, I have to do it. And it's all from the staff. You have other factors like standards of living, people who aren't residents, who are on student visas or working holiday visas, who have a certain lifestyle or a certain life that they need to pay for, and now they get zero government support, so it's actually up to me now. So I've got a working force, even if only 2 or 3 of those people are working holidays or student visas, what do I have to do for them? They've only got me, so I've got to help them out.
Chris goes on to elaborate about the bureaucratic hurdles he's had to jump over just to keep his staff employed and ultimately help them survive.
So the biggest issue that I've felt is that the JobKeeper is too much paperwork for it, too much ambiguity whether I'm going to get the money back, and the actual financial strain to off-put it for the last 6 weeks, it's hard at the end of the day. And everyone thinks it's easy to go pull 60, 70 grand, they go pull an interest-free loan. You still got to fill out paperwork, it's still an accounting cost. So for example, all this stuff that I've gotten from the government, it's cost me 7 grand from my accountant. I couldn't do it all myself.
He expresses his frustrations at both the federal and state governments about their lack of clarity while responding to this pandemic and how it would affect businesses.
My biggest issue with that is you had social distancing, you had regulations regarding sanitation and all that type of stuff, to which we were following. We have the space here, we're lucky enough we have the space here as a business so that we could operate and still abide by those rules, yet we weren't allowed to. So in a free market, you would be able to adjust to the laws and to the boundaries. But effectively what's happened, they've given you these guidelines and then just shut you down. So what was the point of the guidelines in the first place? What was the point of saying, do this, 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 this? We could have actually had, we should have either just shut down for 2 weeks straight, no business, no trade, or gone, look, operate for the next 6 weeks, 8 weeks with these certain guidelines. There's a sentiment that the lockouts will lift and everyone go back to this vibrant lifestyle, to which we never had a vibrant lifestyle before this because of lockouts. So I reckon you're going to see a lot of, 50% of your hospitality venues shut down. Those who have survived, they're not going to be making money for at least a year. it's hard at the end of the day.
After wrapping up at Oliveto, I reached out to Dan, a longtime friend of mine and cinematographer based in South Sydney, who's found an interesting way to continue making a living while in lockdown. Dan explains how he's not only pivoted his business model, but made extensive changes to his physical home, turning it into a one-stop film studio.
My name is Danny Reber. I'm the Director of Photography at True Black Visual, and I'm a cinematographer by trade. With most of my work being in the corporate advertising, documentary, and narrative film industry, with the shutdowns and the social distancing laws, it became almost impossible, if not illegal, to carry on operating. Couldn't put together a film crew, couldn't work in a public area, couldn't work in a private space, and definitely couldn't get access to any kind of commercial premises. So most of the job bookings for my whole industry for 2020 were either cancelled or postponed indefinitely, and a lot of small operators and crew members found themselves out of work straight away, and the industry just tanked. I've had to adjust and innovate a little bit and really pivot the kind of work that my company does and the kind of work that I do. Whereas previously it might have been a corporate advertisement, well, there's none of them being shot at the moment. So what I'm doing a lot of is product work. Companies are sending me, a pallet worth of product that they need shot for their website, and I'm shooting product photography and product videography. And that's basically the way that I've managed to continue operating throughout this period. And hopefully we'll be able to continue operating like that until laws are relaxed and I can go back to my regular line of work. I definitely think there needs to be a balance between social responsibility, protecting those that are vulnerable, and obviously dealing with the main problem at hand, which is a very contagious virus. There needs to be a balance between that and also making sure that we have a world to come back to afterwards. Because it's very easy to be altruistic and say that anyone that's trying to continue working is being socially irresponsible. But where do you draw the line for social responsibility? A lot of people are trying to put food on the table, look after their families and their dependents. And I think there really needs to be more clarity between being socially responsible in a pandemic, but like I said, also having a world to come back to afterwards. And that's a very fine line, it's a very hard balancing act, but I think it's one that we really can't knee-jerk on. It needs to be well thought out, and people also need to have that sense of responsibility to other people as well, to small business owners, to casual workers, to anyone really with a job that's trying to survive this. Looking back in hindsight, I think the biggest contributing factor to the issues for my business were a very distinct lack of clear, concise and confident information coming through from the government. You had massive discrepancies between what the federal government was saying, what state governments were saying, and also what timelines they were using. And as a result of that lack of information, a lot of businesses just hibernated as a result, because there was no clear timeline, there were no clear answers, and there was no clear guide as to what should we be doing now. People were more than happy to take on any advice, but we needed to actually have some level of unity in government so that businesses didn't just hibernate as a result. So had that have been handled differently, I feel like a lot of people in my industry could have carried on working, could have made their pivots a lot sooner, adapted sooner, and come out of this a lot better off.
From there, it was back into the CBD to see Phil from footage. I've known Phil for years now, and he's no stranger to adapting his business, being in the fast-moving world of fashion. Even with that in mind, COVID-19 has tested his resolve.
My name's Phil. I've owned footage since 2003, October. So we're good 16 and a half years in business in Darlinghurst. And we started up being a sneaker specialty store, and then we're now a full-fledged head-to-toe fashion, lifestyle, more of a multifaceted shop of sorts. Well, in the initial couple of weeks, I think from the start point of when the shutdown was being announced, we had experienced an 85% downturn in our business. There was no chance for anyone to come through the shops. There was no way for us to make any sort of money from the bricks and mortar perspective. People weren't able to come out. So in that sense, it affected us very massively. We then focused very heavily on getting a lot of our products migrated online. That was one of the first strategies that we felt was important to identify, and we did that quite fastidiously within the first 2 or 3 weeks. Other types of strategies involve emailing just to tell people, hey, we're still alive, we're not closed. Shop with us online. We're just reminding people, reiterating the message that, hey, you can still get behind the store. So ultimately, the focal point really is on everyone's well-being, the community at large, the country as a whole, and of course globally, because this is a global pandemic, so everyone's affected in some way or form, or some shape or form. So the authorities have accurately identified health as the main key thing to tackle first, and I completely agree with that. Now, the cost of that, obviously, with the shutdown is that commerce is affected, and with that comes your pay packet, how you're going to survive, how you're going to feed your families, how you put food on the table, a roof over your head. So things like that, at some point you have to make some kind of a balancing act and figure out what that decision is. For me, the main thing that government needs to identify is a clear message. For looking back at the last six to 7, 8 weeks since the lockdown, I felt that a lot of the time the message hasn't been quite as clear. So people aren't sure whether they can actually go out without a heavy heart, go and support local business, go and buy things. They're not sure what the rules and regulations are. There hasn't been a lot of news encouraging people to come out to support shops.
Before we leave, I asked Phil one final question. Does he still have enough fight in him for yet another big pivot in the business that he built from the ground up?
For us here, we've survived 16 and a half years. We've evolved our business, golly, it would have been 7, 8 times. So we would have seen different models at different stages of the chrono of our store. We will find a way, and I'm positive about that. And I think that other people, other stakeholders in the community will do the same.
Hearing from Chris, Dan and Phil left me with a lot of information to digest. I'd heard from affected business owners. Now it was time to take this information to an elected representative and get his insights into the long road to recovery.
So I think there's a great opportunity for deregulation, facilitated by technology as the most immediate thing that we should be looking to do, to turn a negative into a positive, as you say. I'm chairing an inquiry into fintech and regtech, and that is one of the things that I've asked, the world for their ideas on. The best thing we can do right now is to safely open the economy on the basis of the health advice. We're trying to open up the hospitality industry because a lot of youth work in the hospitality sector and retail, obviously. I mean, more broadly, Brian, the opportunity for Australia coming out of this pandemic is to look into that too hard basket of tax and industrial relations issues, which are really the two big chunky issues which hold the nation back from a competitive position. So when you talk to businesses and you say, okay, you've got an investment that you might want to make in Australia or Singapore or California or somewhere else, the two big things they nominate usually are taxation and labour laws as things which encourage them to invest in other jurisdictions. So I think those two areas will be very important. We will support industries which we have effectively closed down.
This is the plan for a COVID-safe Australia. 3 steps, moved out at the pace of states and territories, that will get us back where we need to be as quickly as we can.
Out of all this, it's become clear to me that what businesses all around Australia need, regardless of their size, is a more transparent and simple economic landscape for them to exist in. That means cutting burdensome regulations that prevent businesses from operating to their full potential, reducing the tax burden, allowing businesses to employ more people with the money they save, and subsequently helping businesses recover faster so that all Australians can get out of the COVID-19 economic downturn. We should be supporting business owners like Chris, Dan and Phil that are willing to adapt and be contributing members of the economy. We should get out of their way and let them operate, because it's these types of business owners that are the backbone of Australia's economy and our lifeline out of this.